Leading up to a police shooting in Anderson, an eruption of gunfire, you recall, left a police officer and another man injured in its wake. Happened on the north side of Anderson. Anderson police said the officer pulled over a car in Pendleton. The officer detained the woman who was driving before police say someone in the passenger seat opened fire. The officer then shot back. The officer's injuries are considered minor. The suspect was taken to a hospital in serious condition.
Breaking news this morning, two separate officer-involved shootings happening overnight, one of them injuring an officer. That shooting happened near Cesar Chavez and Scott Streets just before 11 p.m. Milwaukee Police Chief Jeffrey Norman says the officer was there on patrol during Cinco de Mayo celebrations.
For Cinco de Mayo, when a suspect fired shots, subsequently striking an officer. Officer did not return fire and no one else was struck. The officer, a 29-year-old male with over 1 year of service, was transported to a local hospital for treatment for non-fatal injuries. MPD has 3 persons of interest in custody and recovered 2 firearms.
As you just heard from Chief Norman, the 29-year-old officer suffered non-fatal injuries and is expected to survive. 3 people are in custody with charges pending. Chief Norman says this entire incident was senseless and ruins events for those who are trying to celebrate peacefully.
We are trying to celebrate culture, family. We want to honor the history. And here we are dealing with violence in a senseless manner, where we don't understand the reasoning of having the use of firearms, especially in a reckless manner, when there should be a celebration about freedom and independence. This is something our community does not want. This is something that we cannot tolerate within our city.
Police are asking anyone with information about this shooting to contact them. You can also submit tips anonymously through Crime Stoppers at 224-TIPS.
Tonight, Colfax residents are on edge after a shootout left a deputy in critical condition. It happened outside a McDonald's. The Placer County Sheriff's Office says the suspect was also shot and died on scene. ABC 10's Roxanne Elias talked with investigators and has the latest from Colfax.
Chris and Laura, when something like this happens in a small community like Colfax, it disrupts everything. The scene has since been cleared. The roads are back open. Businesses are back up and running, but not before leaving an entire community in shock.
I came into work this morning, didn't think that, they were going to have everything shut down.
Rod Allen, an employee at Marvell in Colfax, had no idea a man he had spoken to the night before would later be accused of shooting at deputies.
My supervisor that I was working with had mentioned that, hey, I think that's the guy my friend was texting me about, that it was involved in a burglary, near her house earlier this week.
According to the Placer County Sheriff's Office, multiple deputies were patrolling the area of South Auburn Street in Colfax when they noticed a van at this McDonald's parking lot. It matched the description of a van involved in a burglary in the area the day before.
Deputies went up to make contact with the van and the suspect who was in the van. That suspect immediately became uncooperative. At some point in time during this contact, the suspect began firing at deputies.
Deputies returned fire, and during the exchange, a deputy was hit. He's in critical condition but expected to survive. The suspect was also shot at some point and pronounced dead on scene. It's unclear if he shot himself or if he was hit by deputy gunfire. The general manager of the McDonald's says employees had just closed the restaurant a few minutes before.
Now everybody's scared. Everybody called me and say they really don't want to come in and close again because we don't know what happened.
That same day around noon, another separate incident also shut down the same area.
Well, it's madness, and we had an incident prior to that in that morning where a gentleman came in and was, talking about how he had guns in the vehicle.
But it had nothing to do with what had happened the night before. The McDonald's general manager says she's not chancing it with her employees. She's asking them to leave in groups once they close up at night.
Because the safety is first for my employees.
The Placer County Sheriff's Office says they expect the investigation to be a long and thorough one, just to look at all the details. They say thankfully no one else was injured here because it happened at night. Chris, Laura, back to you in studio.
First, a late-night shootout at a hotel in South San Jose injured 2 San Jose police officers and the man who fired at them.
ABC 7 News South Bay reporter Dustin Dorsey has more on what the early investigation revealed about the suspect. But first, Dustin, how are the officers doing?
Larry and Kristen, we are happy to report that both officers are in stable condition after being involved in a shooting that involved a man with 2 felony warrants out for his arrest. One officer spent the day in the hospital with life-threatening injuries, but the entire city is thankful that both are expected to survive.
Our officers' families got the call they always dreaded and prayed would never come. And we got a reminder of the courage it takes to put on the badge every day, knowing you would give your life to protect the city you love.
Some relief knowing 2 officers will survive after what was a dangerous night in South San Jose. Acting Chief Paul Joseph says SJPD responded to this extended stay America hotel at 10:30 Thursday night. A woman called 911 to report a man with a domestic violence restraining order was trying to get in the room. Police say 33-year-old San Jose resident Kevin Briones had a warrant out for his arrest for possessing a firearm while on probation. They say he was recorded on an officer's body cam walking away from the woman's room on the 3rd floor. He was carrying a duffel bag.
In less than 1 minute after officers first contacted the suspect, he retrieved a stolen handgun from the duffel bag and fired at the officers. The suspect fled, running away from the officers while continuing to shoot multiple rounds at them. At least one officer returned fire and struck the suspect.
Both officers were hit during the gunfire. One suffered minor injuries. The other officer suffered life-threatening injuries, but is expected to survive.
You could go to this call 1,000 times and nothing ever goes wrong. And the 1,001st time is this one. And unfortunately for this officer, with less than 1 year, just about 1 year of experience, that horrible day was last night.
Police say Briones jumped out of a 3rd-floor window to escape after being shot by officers, but he was quickly arrested. Inside that room he was trying to get into, a mother and her 3 children. Chief Joseph is thankful they and the officers all survived the night.
I can't imagine what his motives would have been other than to do them some serious harm. And it's just fortunate that our officers arrived in time to intervene and they took that harm. The harm was to them and not to this domestic violence survivor and those children.
And those 2 officers are 2 of the 5 that have been shot in the line of duty for San Jose police in the last 15 months. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan says more needs to be done to keep these repeated offenders from committing crimes and get guns off the streets, to support officers and keep our entire